Welcome to Hancock's VMware Half Hour. And welcome back to another Hancock's VMware Half Hour. Well, we're going to continue on our theme of partition manipulation or partition mangling with a VMware vSphere virtual machine. And if you actually watched the last video, we had a little look at the, if we go all the way back to an article that I wrote about 10 plus years ago. We were using a product then to expand and manipulate partitions called gparted live CD-ROM, which is still around today. There are many third-party utilities that we can use to expand, extend, and manipulate partitions. And in the last video, we actually basically look at gparted. In today's video, we're going to have a little look at a product called AOMEI. Not quite really sure how you pronounce it, but it's a free Windows product. And you may remember that we have our virtual machine, which is a Windows Server 2025. And in the last video, I showed you how we could use gparted to manipulate the partitions so that you could move the recovery partition to the end of the disk, and then we could grow our operating system partition. So we'll do exactly the same thing today in this video, but we're going to use a different product. So you may remember that we actually created a snapshot of this particular virtual machine. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to revert to that snapshot, or I'm going to revert back to that snapshot. So this isn't going to have any of the changes that we've made in the last video. We've thrown all of them away. I'm going to start that virtual machine up again. And when we have a little look at that virtual machine, it will be exactly the same as it was before we actually basically mangled the partitions. So that machine hopefully will be starting up, and I'm going to connect to that through RDP. Interesting, because I thought that could have actually connected back to the machine. So I'm going to connect to that machine. Let's just bring that into focus so that you can actually see that a little bit more clearly. Now, I'd like to explain that basically, because we've rolled the machine back in time, if you think about it, we've actually basically reverted that machine to a point in time in the past. So because that machine wasn't shut down cleanly, the NTFS dirty flag is still set on the partition, and that's why basically the shutdown event tracker is basically telling us that the computer has shut down unexpectedly. So that's completely normal to see that when we revert a snapshot. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to check to see that our partitions are in exactly the same order that they were before we did the snapshot. And of course they are. So we've got a 100 meg FE system partition. We've got our 89, approximately 90 gig operating system partition. We've got our 674 megabyte healthy recovery partition. And at the very end of the disk, we've got our 10 gig unallocated portion, which of course is the 10 gig that we added to the virtual machine disk when we didn't actually basically have a snapshot on it, because we can't extend a virtual disk when you have a snapshot in place. So we did have a snapshot to demonstrate that we couldn't extend it. Then I deleted the snapshot, then we extended the disk, then I've created a snapshot again so that we can actually basically track changes or revert changes in the guest operating system. So I've already copied the tools that we want to use, because there wasn't really any point in copying the tools onto the disk when there's a snapshot in place, because every time I revert it, the tools aren't going to be present. Should have actually basically put them before I created the snapshot. But anyway, I've actually basically put the tools that we're going to use on our NAS. So I'm just going to log in with an account that I know has access to the ISO folder. And I put them in a folder called Partition Tools. There we go. And we're going to use, it was called the Free Partition Manager. So we're just going to install Free Partition Manager, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to pretend, or I'm going to pretend, we want to keep the recovery partition, as I've sort of kind of suggested. I don't think there's any need for them. Personally, I would just delete them and be done with it, and then create a golden master template, and then I just keep rolling that template out. And if we needed to expand, then we could just basically right click that partition and click extend, and we wouldn't really have any issues. And we'll have a little look at that in one of the videos coming up as well, as to how we can do that rather than using third-party software. I don't really like installing software. The reason I don't really like these products is that they do actually basically touch your operating system. They actually install something in your operating system, and with the sort of kind of the malware and the scamware and the nagware and everything else, I'm a little bit cautious really installing third-party utilities on my servers. That's why I prefer to use gparted live, because it doesn't touch the operating system at all. It's running outside of that completely independently, because basically we're just booting from an ISO and then we're doing partition manipulations. But whatever you want to use, here are some options. So I like the way it says enjoy now. Okay. So now it's actually basically going to go off and start going to the internet for whatever reason. Not really a fan of that either, really, to be honest with you. Yeah, flash sales on. Yeah, get rid of all that. I don't want that. I don't want all that's about. Okay, so let's have a little look at what we've actually basically got here. Okay, so the layout is similar to what we've seen before. We've got 100 gig disk. We've got a FAT32 position partition, which is the FE partition. We've got another partition. We've got our main NTFS 90 gig partition. We've got our recovery partition, and we've actually basically got our unallocated 10 gig at the end. So, you know, what we really want to do is we want to expand that partition to 90 gig. But probably the first thing we're going to have to do really is that we're going to have to move that partition. So it gives us the option to wipe, delete, format. This is nagging me down here now. Okay, so the first thing really we're going to have to do, if we have a little look at resize move, there's not really an awful lot we can do here with our 90 gig partition. And of course, that's because, as I mentioned to you before, the unallocated portion of the partition, or of the disk, sorry, is not contiguous, i.e. it's not sitting right next to where we want to move. So the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to move this recovery partition. So I want to move that recovery partition all the way to the end of the disk and click OK. And then this may give me the ability to then expand into that and click OK. So if we actually have a little look at what changes we want to apply. So we've moved the NTFS recovery partition to the end of the disk. And we've now expanded our NTFS partition into the space that's left to give us effectively 100 gig. Now, could have done all this really with gparted if I was paying attention, but I actually basically did it in two passes. I moved the recovery partition to the end of the disk first, which then moved the unallocated partition in front of the operating system partition, and then we actually basically moved that up to in two processes. I could have done the same here. We could have done one process basically to move it to the end, then do another change. But anyway, so I'm going to click apply, and this is where things are a little bit different, because what now happens is this now actually basically restarts the server. So if I click proceed, sorry, resize move partition is not available in the demo version. Well, there we go. That's knackered that then, hasn't it? And that's what really annoys me with free software that says it's free and it's not. So I'm not going to purchase this just to demonstrate it. Get full version to activate all versions with limited time discount. So, you know, to be honest, really, you know, the fact that it actually basically describes it as a download freeware. Yeah, you know, what does it really, what does it do? If it can't actually basically, let's just have a little look again, see what this can do. If there's anything really that we can do free with it. So it turned around and said that it cannot, not really sure what the point of a piece of partition mangling software. Fast, enhanced, sorry, resized move partition is not available in the demo version. I don't really know what the point of a freeware version if it can't actually basically do anything. Let's just go back, and let's just go back. Like we can't one click adjust space. Yeah, like, you know, there's, you can see here that that's the partition we want to actually grow into the unallocated space. That is actually causing us a problem. I wonder if, I bet we can probably delete. Yeah, we can delete that partition, but that's not really what we wanted to do, because I actually basically said that some of you out there may actually want to keep it. We can probably, can we resize? Yeah, you know, we could resize the recovery partition. Not that we want to do that either, but we can't move it. Let's just try that again and move. Okay. Apply. Proceed. No. Upgrade to demo to discount now. Okay, well, we'll scrap that. I think I've demonstrated there that for whatever reason, let's just have a little look. I'm just going to big X out of that a minute. Do you want to commit? No, I don't want to commit them. I'm just going to have a little look at have I store 80% off, download freeware. I'm just trying to see whether or not that it actually basically tells us what we can do here. So it says it can basic partition management, whatever that is. Create, format, delete, label, check, set active, change drive letters. We can do all that really in disk management. Change partition size, resize and move partitions, it says in the freeware version. Well, resize and move partitions, split partitions, merge partitions, or unallocated space. Disk clone. Well, I don't really know why it's telling me that that is resize and move partitions. Did I download the wrong product? It says home use. It's possible, of course, that this is running on a server, and therefore, because it's running on a server, business use, wipe system disk. Some particular applications, of course, when they run on a server, then deem it's not home use, it's commercial use. Just going to have a little look, see whether or not I've got the right version here in what I've downloaded. PSys standard, yeah, it's the same ESXi. Just let me. I'm just gonna have a little Google quickly, and come back and let you know why. Okay, this is really what I was looking for, and I expected as much. PA standard freeware, Windows PCs, Windows Server. No, you need to have Partition Assistant Server, which is not available as freeware. You've got to buy it to be able to do that. So AOMEI Partition Assistant Edition. Yeah, you can probably basically use it on Windows 10, Windows 11, and maybe we'll do a video on that. But trying to use it for Windows Server is going to be a non-starter. So there's a good 14 minutes wasted. So it's not a problem, because what we're going to do we're going to go back to our server, and we're going to have a little look at EPM free installer. Now, it doesn't surprise me really, because all those years ago there was something called Partition Magic, and there was Partition Magic, and then Partition Magic Server Edition, I think, and they might have even a different name. And the only difference between the two was if you actually installed it on a server, it wouldn't work. You had to have the server edition to manage or manipulate partitions on a server. So let's have a little look really whether or not the EASUS is going to be any different. And it looks, likely this product may operate in exactly a similar way. It's a server product, and therefore, because it's a server product, they deem it's not home use. And therefore you can't use a home use product, which actually goes to show that really there is only one product that you can use for free, and that's Gparted Live CD-ROM. So we'll install this product now, and we'll have a little look, see whether or not that we've got the ability. I must admit, it does really annoy me that you go looking for tools for free, and it says freeware, and then they are somewhat crippled and limited in a way afterwards. Anyway, so we're just installing this particular product, but again, it comes back to why I don't actually basically like installing this TOS to start with on my servers and workstations as well. Really, I much really have a better understanding of what's being installed, what's being done to the operating system than these things, really, to be honest with you. Well, this is actually basically taking a while. I mean, these applications aren't really very big. But I think a lot of these applications now are also installing from the internet, I think. So they've got little small installation stubs, and then they fetch a lot of what they need now from the internet. And I think that's all to do with licensing. And here we go again. See, this is obviously going off to the internet as well with the browser. So let's just see whether or not that quickly. Partition Master Pro, Partition Recovery. Okay, let's just big X out of that. Okay, so this is started already. Okay, so now another application, and this is the ESXi free partition manager. So this one's got a slightly nicer GUI representation of this. So we've got a FAT32, we've got another partition, we've got our main operating system partition, we've got our recovery partition here, and we've got our unallocated partition. So what we want to do, again, we could just whack that partition, we could just turn around and say delete. We don't want to do that because we want to keep it in this particular video. What we want to do, we want to resize this. But can we actually resize and move? Okay, so interestingly, it does actually basically say here that we can fill in all unallocated without actually basically moving, because we could do a resize and move that. So we could actually effectively move that all the way at the end of the disk. It's there. And we could expand that. But interestingly, when we say resize move here, it's actually allowing us to fill in the unallocated portion. So let's just click OK. So this is rather interesting that this particular product is actually allowing us to, in one task, it's intelligently worked out that it wants to move that partition to the end, which would then basically free up that 10 gig of unallocated space and add it to our C drive. So let's execute the task and see what happens. Okay, so it has actually it has broken it down into 2 steps, but with one manipulation in the GUI, it's actually basically intelligently worked out what it needs to do, which is okay. It means that the end user doesn't really have to understand what they need to do. So the first step is resize move partition on the disk 0, which is the NTFS recovery partition to the end of the disk, and then resize move partition C on disk. Okay, yeah, okay, so let's just click OK and apply. Here we go again. Choose the right solution for your business. Yeah, okay, so we're knackered there as well. You know, it's not free either. That's going to cost you $399 or $159 for a server. So I think the answer there is the answer there is realistically that if you actually basically want to use these products that are called free, then they're going to cost you if you're trying to basically do those changes with a Windows server operating system. So let's just big X out of that, get rid of that, exit the program because that's been a load of tosh. Congratulations. Yeah, that's a load of nonsense. That's a load of rubbish. Snapshot reversion is fun, isn't it? Right, okay. Well, you may have actually basically seen in the last couple of minutes that we've completely failed using the freeware versions of AOMEI Partition Assistant and EAS Ease Us Free Partition Manager. Don't waste your time. Don't bother downloading them. You know, unless you actually basically want to part with some Wonga, they're not going to help you with a server-based operating system at all. They're just going to basically pop up and nag you that you need to go and pay them some money, hundreds of dollars, basically to move or do partitions. So look at my last video on Gparted Live CD-ROM because we didn't have any issues with that at all. So, you know, finally what I'm actually going to do at the end of this video is I'm going to show you really how we can whack and get rid of that recovery partition. Because as I've sort of kind of said to you, and personally, I don't think you need it in a virtual machine. It's completely wasted time. So, you know, after you've actually basically installed your operating system, whether it be Windows 11, Windows 10, 2016, 2019, 2022, 2025, first thing you want to do really, get rid of the recovery partition, and you're never ever going to have this problem again. You don't need to look at these videos either. So first thing we need to do is basically just to run an administrative prompt. I won't say DOS prompt because DOS is long gone, but a command prompt. So basically just create yourself a CMD shortcut on the desktop and do a right click, run as administrator, and then basically you've got an administrative console or command prompt. And then you want to run disk part, P-A-R-T. So disk part, just as it sounds, D-I-S-K-P-A-R-T. There is no other way of deleting, you know, like if we go back to our disk management and we try to delete that, you know, we can't do it. And this is by design really to stop you accidentally deleting partitions. So, you know, you've got no options at all to delete that from within the GUI. You have to do it via disk part at the console or command prompt. I'm sorry. So the first thing we want to do is use the command select disk 0. So that actually basically selects the disk we're working on. Again, this is really to ensure that we are working with the right disk that we want to manipulate partitions on, so we don't make any mistakes. We can then use a command called list partitions or list part, and that will actually basically show us the partitions on the disk. And you can see here partition 1 is the system, partition 2 is reserved, partition 3 is the primary, so that's our 90 gig operating system partition, and then partition 4 is the recovery partition, the one that we want to whack and delete. So I'm going to basically do select part 4. So partition 4 is now selected, so any of the commands now that I execute from here on are going to be executed on partition 4. Now if you just do a delete part, if I just do delete part for delete partition, it's going to come back basically with an error message and tell me, sorry, cannot delete protected partition without the force protect parameter set. Now, all that really means is we just basically do delete part override. Again, you know, all these things really are to stop us accidentally deleting partitions. However, of course, when we do delete part override, it's not going to come back and challenge us and say, do you really want to do this? It's just going to do it. So if I now basically do a list, if I select disk 0, and I say list part, then you can clearly see here we've got 1, 2, and 3 partitions. So basically we'll exit out of that, go back to our disk part, and here we can see quite clearly now that we've basically, I say that a lot. If I just back out of that, then we can see that the recovery partition is gone. And this is how we would traditionally extend the disk. So I'd actually right click the disk. I would say extend volume, followed by next, selected disk. If I go back and select that disk, add next, you selected the following disk selected, disk 0, followed by finish, and there is our partition expanded, extended. See how easy it is when we've not got that recovery partition, which, as I said to you, I don't really think is actually basically needed in a virtual environment. You know, there are quicker ways that we can recover a virtual machine if required than having that stupid 600 and something gig partition, which is added on the end when we do fresh installs. If I now basically turn this server into a golden master, into a template, and we roll it out, we're never ever going to come across that problem ever again. So maybe what I'll do, maybe I'll quickly fire up a Windows 10 or Windows 11 virtual machine, and we'll have a little look at those two tools again, and see whether or not they operate freely. But as we have seen in this video, they don't work with Windows Server. You're going to have to pay some money. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this video, another episode in Hancock's VMware Half Hour. If you've liked this video, then please give a thumbs up and like it. If you don't like it, then please give a thumbs down. But whatever you do, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to come back for another video in Hancock's VMware Half Hour. So all the best now, and you be safe, and goodbye.